Okay, wonderful ladies, thank you so much. I'd like to start by reminding you of your scaffolding as humans in mind, body, and spirit. I want to remind you of your true nature and the capacity and power that you have to do things differently. I want to remind you that you are whole within a greater whole in harmony and alignment, because we all seem to forget. So at 25 in medical school, I had my first child, and I proceeded into this decade of my life I shall call the deep dive. I went subterranean. From marriage to residency, second child, graduating to working, a third child, I put my head down and I proceeded to weave this beautiful tapestry of doing. Always doing, but I was rarely being. In order to keep up with the frenetic pace of my doing, my mind began matching it. I was thinking, always thinking. Thinking became my baseline. Moreover, my body was beginning to match the state of my thoughts. I was developing daily significant body pain, joint issues, food intolerance, headache, fatigue. Getting out of bed became very challenging. I was a mess. I believe my body wisdom was trying to teach me to wake up. I actually painted this painting during that time, and what a cry for help. I look at it now, I think, God. Anyway, I wasn't doing well. Disconnected. Anyway. It turns out I was not alone. As a species, we've become imbalanced. We are all seeking to get somewhere, accomplish the next task, usually preoccupied with the thoughts, identified with the static in our mind. In this way, we become disconnected from our true nature, disconnected from any natural cycle of life. We are behaving as individuals, working usually just to possess and consume without greater connectivity or greater purpose. In 2009, the World Health Organization issued a concerning statement that global chronic disease was becoming one of the greatest risk factors for world economic instability. This is right behind the fall of the Chinese economy. Our health is serious. What we are experiencing on an individual level is being reflected in our interconnected world systems. And we see this. Our world is in crisis. Environmental, financial, political, spiritual. Is it possible that we are creating this dysfunction? And if so, how can we begin to change this? Can attention to our own individual dis-ease become a catalyst, not only for personal change, but for global change? And if so, do we need to begin by changing our perspective? So in the West, we all do this. We're preoccupied with the self. We're preoccupied with the individual. And Western medicine, as I was trained, reinforces this cognitive construct of separation and individuality. So for example, in cardiology in the West, we consider the heart as an organ, as a structure. We think of the muscles, the electricity within the heart, and the other organ systems that inform it. Let's contrast this with teachings from the East, from traditional healing that see the heart as our divining rod. It is our connection to all others. It is our source of inspiration. A group in California called HeartMath is producing research to support this. They've measured the electromagnetic frequency of the heart as emitting 3 feet, I can't reach, but 3 feet outside the physical body. In this way, my heart frequency is affecting your heart frequency, and you are affecting me. So these are 2 patients. They're both wearing heart rate monitors. The woman on the bottom has been asked to feel love and compassion. When we feel love and compassion, the variability or the change of our heart rate takes on this beautiful undulating sine curve. And with it, it pulls in other systems. It pulls in your breathing system, your thinking system, and your blood pressure. You're pulled into a state of coherence. Coherence is a state of maximum productivity, creativity, and healing. When we are in a coherent state, we are in flow. During my deep dive, I was most certainly not in flow. I was probably looking like the person on the top, totally disconnected. I had learned how to understand the physical body, but I had no understanding or appreciation for how the mind might be affecting the body. So I decided to throw out a really big net, change my perspective, and I went on a path of exploration. My learning began after a conversation with a friend who had just come back from Thailand, and she was telling me about her experience in the monastery where she was practicing meditation and quieting her mind to increase awareness. I was dumbfounded. Actually having the conversation, I was feeling anxiety, because the idea of quieting my mind was so foreign to me. I said, listen, I could never meditate. To which, because she was so zen, she said, that's exactly why you need to. So meditation is an ancient practice. It predates our ancient times. It's rooted in prehistoric ceremony. Mindfulness is a form of meditation, dates 2,500 years back to the teachings of Buddha. Mindfulness is the practice of aligning one's present to the now in a kind and non-judgmental way in order to increase awareness. Buddha reflected that our minds jump from thought to thought, just like monkeys jump from branch to branch. He suggested that we pay attention to the breath moving in and moving out. It feels good. Breathing is the great interrupter. When we breathe, we immediately pay attention to the now. In this way, we can begin separating from our thoughts and not only changing our thoughts, but changing the structures of our brains. So our brains learn pathways like water flowing through canyons. Over time, with habitual thinking, our thoughts become more and more ingrained. They get stuck. Neurons that fire together, it says they wire together. When we practice meditation, we can begin to shake up old patterns of thinking. We can lay down new neural networks. This is the process of neuroplasticity and the science that studies this. With neuroplasticity, we can actually begin to change not only the way we think, but our brain structure itself. Now, if that wasn't cool enough, because I think that's so cool, like you can change this. Our thoughts also inform our physical body. So every time I think, my neuron, the cell in my brain, releases a chemical signal called a neurotransmitter. That neurotransmitter triggers a cascade of neuropeptides and hormones that flood my body tissue. So if I think a negative thought, I'm going to tune my autonomic nervous system into a state of alarm. And my tissue will just respond accordingly. My cells will create their own signature of distress. They will create oxidative stress. This state of chronic inflammation is thought to be the basis of most, if not all, chronic disease, cardiovascular disease, obesity, cancer, and Alzheimer's. I realized that my decade of overthinking was creating chronic body distress. The good news is, because there's always good news, everything we do influences our body. So the DNA that we inherit from our mother and our father is not a promise of things to come. It is merely a suggestion. The expression of our DNA is not fixed. It's continually being informed by your internal and your external environment. So begin thinking of everything as information. The food we eat, the relationships we cultivate, the movement we take on, the fluids we drink. This information is entering your body and telling the genes in your cells, do I turn on or do I turn off? The space where our DNA meets this environmental information is the expression of self. This is where we come from. When I learned this realization, this research is about probably the last decade, maybe a little more, I was dumbfounded, astounded. Albert Einstein has famously said, you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. I recognized in order for me to fundamentally understand my condition, but also health, I needed to change my entire structure, my thinking paradigm. So I looked away from the West. I included the West, but I looked towards the East, to Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine and Indian medicine, Ayurveda. I looked to whole medicine systems, these are thousands of years old, that understand the complexity between mind, body, and spirit. I learned of shamanism, traditional healers rooted to Gaia, rooted to Mother Earth, explorers of consciousness who recognize this intricate web of life we find ourselves in. And with this knowledge, I blended this lens of West meets East. I began thinking of mind influencing body, guided by spirit, and I shifted. It began as a choice and then became this self-propagating wheel of change. I began changing what I was eating, how I was moving. I was quieting my mind. I was changing my experience, and with my changing experience, I think I was awakening my DNA to a new real. Like Alexis 2.0, I felt like a different person. I had set into succession a really rapid pattern of change, in truth. I was living in Ontario, so we moved, I changed jobs, I was doing things differently, eating differently. It was 2012, and I felt phenomenal. All my bobos, all my body pain had gone away. I was shimmering in this state of new flux. And I had set into motion this pendulous swing of ascent, up, up, up. But as is true with all natural systems, there must be balance. With my ascent came the greatest fall. I had not yet learned about polarity, but I was about to. My marriage was ending. And with it, I descended into this place of cavernous grief I had not ever been before. It is the proverbial rock bottom. If you've been there, you will know it. Stay too long, it's the place of annihilation. It's the place of death. And despite everything I knew, I was doing my yoga and eating my good food and trying to meditate. I couldn't stop this searing pain that had settled inside my chest. I was so resistant to my situation. I would not accept that this was happening to me. So one night, alone, lights off, in my house, by myself, I looked like the one from The Ring. I was just like totally broken. And I remember wailing. I was bawling my eyes out. And the pain in my chest had grown so profound those weeks, specifically that month. I remember thinking, okay, this is actually how you die from a broken heart. So as my mind was once again overthinking, contemplating my fate, my body wisdom took over, and I found myself on my knees. I'm gonna get on my knees, if you can see me. The prayer I spoke came out of my body without thought, without edit, totally from a place of authenticity. I said, please do not leave me here. I said, I surrender. Show me and I will follow. There is a knock on my door. And I'm like, Jesus? Like, what? This is a true story. So I go to my door, like the one from The Ring. It's my neighbor, Chris Cromwell. And we are equally shocked at the sight of one another. He said to me, as any earth angel would, what the are you doing? So, in he comes, he turns on all my lights, because I'm in the dark, it's nighttime. He said, Alexis, I have watched you lose your power for the last year, and this is stopping tonight. So he got a bottle of red wine, he came me back, and he stages an intervention. So I'm just taking it in. I promised God. I said, look, show me and I'll follow. So I'm just going to listen. My spirit had been scattered. I lost my power because I forgot I had it in the first place. I believe my intense grief that night was a catalyst, and my act of surrender was a resurrection. All I could feel afterwards was compassion and forgiveness for myself and my husband. There was never a hero or a villain in our story. We were both gray. No black, no white. It simply was. Oops, sorry. And all I could think was, well done, universe. Like, well done. You can't make that stuff up. Like, it took the whole decade to teach me this. It took the dysfunction of the mind. It took the pain of the body. It took receiving the change, creating the change, the polarity of that magnitude to teach me that both are necessary. It took me the whole turn of the wheel. So I'd like to share with you some guidance that I've learned along the way. We are all teachers and students. We are learning, feeling, falling, only to rise up and learn and feel all over again. We are playing and players in this most beautiful game of life, because life is a jewel, but it is not easy. I need us to understand a common truth. Change is hard. It's really hard. Research tells us this. Neurologically, psychologically, it's challenging to make behavior change. So when you're changing, and if you feel you need to change, honestly, genuinely give yourself some love and compassion, because it's a hard work. So when you've lost your rudder, as I did, this is your goddess's guide to finding your way back. So first, remember your true nature. You are not lumps of tissue rolling through life like a meatball. You are made of stardust. The elements in your body come from the stars. You are mothers. You are daughters. You are givers of life, keepers of creation. You are complex superorganisms inhabiting this realm, this body, and choosing to dance this cosmic game. You are divine, so play and act accordingly. You are always the captain of your boat. And like any skilled captain, you will look for the signposts. The universe will show you first the pebble, then the rock, and if you don't listen, you'll get the brick. So watch for the pebbles and chart your course accordingly. Learn your terrain, turn on your internal GPS, and figure out where are you? Where are you starting, inside and out? Quiet your mind. The constant chatter in your mind is not real. It is based on perceptions that are often false, usually based on fear. It's the construct of your ego. Open your heart. Listen to the information. This is your seat of knowing. It's your antenna. Practice gratitude and self-love. It will help you get into that state of flow. Nourish yourself. So from solar energy to plants to animals, this earth is here to nourish us. So choose colorful and vibrant food. Move the bricks. By choosing healthy information, we change the expression of our DNA. We can fundamentally shift how we are being made. So when it all gets a little too weird, because it might, as we say in yoga, take that midpoint savasana and lay your beautiful body down. Just take a break. Ground yourself. Choose your tribe. We are all interconnected, and one informs the other. Surround yourself with people who are shining and emitting the same light that you are. When you lose your light and fall in your cave, remember to call back your spirit. We are all connected to Source. Sometimes we have to surrender to a knowledge and a power that is greater than our own. And in between, isn't it cute? In between every morsel of life, there lies mirth. There is humor in the darkest hours. We just have to find it sometimes. So always try and have fun. Life is fun. When we fundamentally believe we can change, then we do. A woman once told me the distance between the mind and the heart is the longest journey, and she was right. See the tools that the universe has at your disposal, and choose to change, because you will change the world. Thank you.
Alexis, Goth.